Okay, I want to take a minute to talk about what I call the 5K's for guitarists, because we're trying to get your playing to the next level. And as a teacher, I see at any given time 30 to 40 students. I've helped hundreds of students reach their goals, and I see a lot of students with the same challenges, facing the same challenges and the same issues, and I design a lot of different exercises and techniques to overcome those. And I also see guitar players that are deficient in certain areas, and I see that over and over again. And it's like, okay, this is what you want to concentrate on to get you to the next level. And so there's 5 basic things that I think are critical that you really have to get down cold in order to get to that next level. Because we're talking about taking you off a plateau. You know how guitar, sometimes you reach a certain level, you plateau off, and you're at that level for a long time, and then you go up and kind of level off again. So we want to get you over those humps. So this is what I call the 5K's, or the 5 no's. And the first K is basically you have to know the notes on the neck. And there's just no way around that one. You just have to memorize it. And later I'm going to do another lesson in this video where I'll give you some tricks to getting the notes down cold. You don't have to learn this overnight or in a series of a weekend. Set a goal, realistic, like over the next 2 months, you're going to start to learn all the notes cold. So you could just grab a note instantly, go to a G note. No, that's G. That's my A. That's my E. So you want to be able to grab any note at any given time. And this is especially important for lead guitar players and for improvisation. And not just knowing the notes on the neck, but also knowing the notes that make up chords and which chords and how these chords are made. Like a C major chord. Knowing that that's a C note, an E note, and a G note in a C major triad. C and G make up that chord. That's critically important. Or like an E minor 7. Right? I'm playing an E, a B, a D, and a G. Root, flat third, fifth, flat 7. That's an E minor 7. That's so important because when you're playing, you might want to outline those chord tones. You might want to land on the flat 7, the third, the fifth, those real strong tones. Hear how that G note just kind of really sticks. So if I'm kind of playing a line over that chord, I'm going to outline the G, or maybe the D. Those are your strong tones. So you'll always be a better musician if you take the extra time to learn the notes that make up the chords, to learn the notes on the neck. It's vital, especially if we're going to be getting into things like playing in the modes. The problem with a lot of guitarists that I see is they just memorize shapes. What I mean by that is like they'll take like a B minor scale. It's in the key of B, B minor, and I'll say, okay, start that scale on the D, because we want to make it D major, and they'll be lost. They won't know because they memorize that scale as this: 1 3 4 1 3 4 1 3 1 2 4 1 2 4. Not the best way to do it. Just learning the shape. You want to know the notes. You want to know you're playing a B, a C sharp, and a D, and so on and so forth. You want to know what notes you're playing on the neck, so you could start it on a D and emphasize the D. Turn it into a D major scale. So knowing the notes is critical. So we're going to get into that in the next segment, how to get these notes down cold. The second K, the second no, is as a guitarist or as a musician, you have to know a lot of chords, and you have to know how to embellish them. You have to build up your chord vocabulary. Or else you're just going to be playing A, D, and E all day long, and that's not going to go very far. It might be a bit limiting. So you're going to have to know a good vocabulary of a major, minor, minor 7, 9s, 11s, and not just knowing the chord, but how to embellish the chord, how to take an A minor and make it into an A minor 7 or an A minor 9. When I play live, I rarely just sit on like an A minor chord, like a stock A minor chord. I'm more often than not playing A minor 7 or maybe an A minor 9. I like chords a lot, and you really have to know how to jazz up what you're doing, how to spice it up by knowing how to embellish these chords, and we're going to spend a lot of time with that. Something as simple as adding suspensions, like taking a D major and playing a D sus4 with your pinky, or D sus2. So instead of sitting on a D chord, which after a while might not be as interesting, throwing in these suspensions. All I was doing there was adding a D sus2 and a D sus4 to a D major, but you can see you're adding much more harmonic interest and richness of those chords. So you have to know lots of chords, and we're going to be getting into that in my further videos. Know lots of chords and know how to embellish them. That's the second K if you want to bring your playing to the next level. The third K is know how to play good rhythm. You got to be able to take these chords, be able to play in time, because music is more than just notes and chords. It's about rhythm and meter and timing. So you have to be able to play in time, and you have to be able to play very good, solid rhythm. A lot of times I see guitar players that just want to play lead guitar and just burn. And they're in for a little bit of a surprise the first time they sit down with their friends just to jam or to play in a band. Because think about it, you're only playing lead guitar, you know, a fraction of an actual song, 10%, 20%. Most of the song is in the rhythm. So your lead playing is really only ever going to be as good as your rhythm playing. So you really want to concentrate on playing good rhythm, solid rhythm, work on your timing. We're going to be working on that through my video series. Be able to play quarter notes, eighth notes, 16th notes, lock in, get a metronome. A lot of my exercises are designed around, you know, you can play them with a metronome. So you always have that beat. You always have that 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 to be there working on your timing. So that is the third K, which is know how to play good rhythm. Okay, the fourth K is being able to know and analyze the chords that you are playing over, because the progression or that string of chords is going to give you the roadmap to what you can use solo and improvisation wise. You have to analyze all the chords to get the most out of what you can play improvisation and lead wise. You just can't look at the key, especially if you're trying to get to the next level. A lot of guitar players do this. They'll be like, they'll go to the keyboard player, what key are we in? C minor. Okay, C minor, go. And they'll play C minor pentatonic scales all day long. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, that's okay, but that can get a bit limiting. As a guitarist, you want to have a lot of what I call, you want to have a lot of weaponry in your arsenal. You want to be able to play in minor pentatonic, but you also want to be able to play in major pentatonic. You want to be able to use the modes. You want to be able to play major scales. You want to be able to play Dorian, to know when to use Aeolian, Mixolydian. And you want to throw all that into the soup, because over certain chords or certain progressions, you could use multiple things. And that's how you're playing, is you're going to separate yourself from the rest of the pack. You're not just going to stay in minor pentatonic or just straight, you know, a straight major scale. You're going to be rolling different modes over that, different arpeggios, and I'm going to teach you how to do that. So you have to be able to analyze the string of chords, not just look at the key. Certain things, like if you're in a minor key and you want to play over all the changes, you have to look for the 4 chord. Is it a minor chord? Is it major? And that will give you the roadmap. So we're going to spend a lot of time on that, because knowing the scales and the arpeggio is not enough. Knowing all the scales or arpeggios in the world isn't going to do you a bit of good unless you know when to use them and how to use them. Knowing the scale is only half of it. You got to know when to whip them out over what chords. And remember, when you're soloing, you have 2 basic choices. You could either solo over all the chords, playing what's called what relates to all, where you're just playing, for instance, if you're playing a string of chords in D major, you're playing D major over all the chords. That's playing what relates to all. Or you can treat each chord like a separate event and play something different over each chord. That's what I tend to do more, and that gives you a little more sophisticated a sound. It's a lot harder to do because you don't want to get caught playing the wrong mode or arpeggio over the wrong chord. So you got to kind of have one ear on what you're doing, other ear on the rest of the band or what you're soloing over, and know when that change comes up, because then you got to switch. We're going to work on that, and that takes a little time to get the hang of, but well worth it, because it really gives you a sophisticated sound. Treating each chord as a separate event. Or you can mix both of them. You can do that for a little bit, and then over the rest of it, play what relates to all. So you have to be able and have the knowledge to analyze those chords, clusters of chords. If you can't do that, you're not going to get to the next level. You're just going to be stuck playing the same one thing over everything. And that, again, is kind of limiting. I'm not saying that's bad, don't get me wrong. I'm saying you could do more. And as a guitar player, you want to have a lot of tools in your toolbox, a lot of weaponry in your arsenal, right? So that's the 4th K. The 5th K, the final K, is knowing the major scales cold. I think that's pretty critical. Knowing the major scale, which is do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, in all the shapes, all the positions over the whole neck. And I think that's critical because the way that I teach the modes, and when I talk about the modes, I'm talking about, you know, the Greek name for these Dorian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Locrian, Aeolian, Phrygian. They're basically, all the modes are just variations of major scales. Okay? So if you know your major scales, you know all the modes. You got them all. You got them all. You're just starting and emphasizing a different note. Some teachers and instructors teach you a different set of shapes for like Mixolydian, then learn a whole nother set of shapes for Dorian, a whole nother set of shapes for Aeolian. I don't do that. I think that's a little redundant. If you know your major scales, you got them all. And in fact, when a lot of students come and see me, they know their major scales, but they just don't know how to use them modally. So within a very short amount of time, I'm getting them to play in the modes because they know the scale, they just need to know how to apply that, and that's what we're going to work on. So those are the 5 Ks. The first K, know the notes on the neck cold. The second K is you have to know a large catalog of chords. The third K is know how to play good rhythm. The fourth K is know how to analyze the chords you're playing over. And the fifth K is know your major scales cold. So analyze those 5 things in your playing and target the ones that you feel need the most work. And this is going to get you to the next level. And you could do it fairly quickly too if you follow the templates that I'm setting up in these lessons. So we'll see you in the next module.